Fellow citizens and residents, good evening. The Court of Appeal of the Eastern Caribbean Supreme Court, sitting in St. Lucia today, Thursday, the 12th March 2020, handed down its much anticipated reserved judgment in the civil appeal brought by the Attorney General of St. Christopher Nevis in the Dominica diplomatic passport case against Dr. Denzil Douglas, former Prime Minister of St. Christopher Nevis, former Member of Parliament for St. Christopher VI, and former Leader of the Opposition. The appeal court reversed the High Court decision which had ruled that Dr. Douglas, in applying for and obtaining a diplomatic passport from the Commonwealth of Dominica, was not under an acknowledgement of allegiance to a foreign power in accordance with the law of Dominica. The appeal court allowed the Attorney General's appeal today, set aside the order of the High Court, and unreservedly declared that Dr. Douglas, by his virtue of his own act, is under an acknowledgement of allegiance, obedience, and or adherence to the Commonwealth of Dominica, and breach the Constitution of the Federation of St. Christopher Nevis, and is required by our Constitution to vacate his seat in the National Assembly. Today's judgment was delivered by the learned Chief Justice, the Honorable Dame Janice Pereira, DBE, and was a unanimous decision of the Court of Appeal. The act by which Dr. Douglas disqualified himself from membership in the National Assembly was indeed his applying for and obtaining a diplomatic passport from Dominica. This act having occurred on the 30th July 2015, I am advised that the period of Dr. Douglas's disqualification dates back to the 30th of July 2015. I am further advised that no appeal against today's landmark decision of the Court of Appeal is provided for in the Constitution of the Federation of St. Christopher and Nevis. It has to be emphasized that the effect of today's decision by the Court of Appeal is that every operation, every activity, every interview, and every speech of Dr. Douglas as a member of the electoral constituency known as St. Christopher VI was carried out by him since 30th July 2015 while he was disqualified from membership in the Parliament, having disqualified himself by virtue of his own act. In this instance, as a matter of constitutional interpretation, Dr. Douglas is disqualified from the National Assembly on account of circumstances which arose after his election on the 16th of February 2015. The question for the Court of Appeal was whether Dr. Douglas's application for, receipt, and use of a diplomatic passport issued by the Commonwealth of Dominica amounted to an acknowledgement of allegiance to the Commonwealth of Dominica, and whether as a result he was required to vacate his seat in the National Assembly. Dr. Douglas had not made a public announcement to his constituents in St. Christopher VI that he had applied for a Dominican diplomatic passport. Indeed, he had first denied it. Evidence was tendered in court which proved that what Dr. Douglas had done came to light during the course of the afternoon of April 23rd, 2016. An immigration officer had been dispatched to the Robert L. Bradshaw International Airport at the U Lounge and was engaged in carrying out the duties of processing departing passengers. Dr. Douglas was in the U Lounge intending to travel on a private flight to Dominica. The immigration officer was inputting the passenger passport information into the border management system and had occasion to process the passport of Dr. Douglas for the purposes of his departure. Once the immigration officer scanned Dr. Douglas's passport using the passport reader machine, the information contained in the passport's biodata page was displayed on the screen in front of the officer. The affidavit evidence of this alert immigration officer reported a clear recollection that it was a passport issued by Dominica. This information was not only displayed on the screen in front of the officer, it was also captured in the border management system, which is why later statements to the contrary were to no avail whatsoever in the face of technology and the documentary record. The detailed information of the government's passport reader machine revealed the surname and Christian names of Dr. Douglas, his date of birth, and his unmistakable passport photograph. It also stated the nationality to be Dominican. The learned Chief Justice was very clear and concise in her deliberations on the interpretation of our constitutional provision. And for the record, I quote paragraph 57 of her judgment, which states, "By virtue of his allegiance in law to the Commonwealth of Dominica, Dr. Douglas is in fact not free to make decisions which are purely in the interests of St. Christopher and Nevis, as there is good authority for the possibility of his legitimate prosecution for any acts done by him which are against the interests of Dominica. By this fact, I am further propelled to the conclusion that Dr. Douglas, by his application for, possession, and the use of a Dominican diplomatic passport, has, by his own act, placed himself under an allegiance to the Commonwealth of Dominica, has voluntarily acknowledged that allegiance, and therefore falls within the category of persons disqualified from sitting in the National Assembly under Section 28, subsection 1A of the Constitution." End of quote. The Constitution requires that there shall be a leader of the opposition in the National Assembly, who shall be appointed by the Governor General. With today's ruling, and as Parliament is likely to meet over the next few weeks, the Governor General shall appoint an elected representative to the position of the Leader of Opposition, who appears likely to command the support of a majority of the representatives who do not support the government. The power to do so shall be exercised by His Excellency the Governor General in his own deliberate judgment. Today's judgment has produced an unprecedented chapter in the annals of our young and proud nation. Never before has any member of Parliament in the history of St. Christopher and Nevis had to vacate his or her seat for any reason, and we hope it will never happen again in our future. I thank you.